We've saved the best in America for last. It's the Podcast Daily. It is the end of the State of the Position series, and we are talking about the secondary. That's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. Bill, are they BIA?
Yes, they are.
The end.
Yeah. I questioned that the last couple of years, right? Like I think there was a time, and I probably said it more than once, where I said I thought they should stop saying it because they weren't living up to it. I fully expect them to live up to it this fall and moving forward with the way that they are recruiting the position to and some of the young guys they have in the room. It is potentially the best second. No, should I say that? Willie Cooker was really good. It's potentially maybe the best secondary they've had, maybe aside from that 2016 secondary. And maybe the ceiling especially with Caleb Downs back there now is as good as that secondary was. Like it's really good. There's not another group in the country I would even consider taking either at safety or corner. They're awesome, and they're going to be awesome. And it's not just this year; it's for I think a few years to come. As long as OG Walt, as the kids call him, is doing what he's doing, recruiting that position group.
By the kids, you mean Berm?
Berm's a kid. Berm's 10 years older than me, but he's a kid.
Yeah, the 16 season though, was kind of a revelation. And I'm bringing this up to say that the expectations are very different. Like that group sort of made BIA a thing in real time, but Marcus Lattimore had to get Marshawn. What did I say? Marshawn Lattimore had to get healthy and do it for the first time. Malik Hooker had to do the same thing. Like they weren't sure things when that happened. When you look at this group, adding Caleb Downs into that mix and knowing what Denzel Burke and Davison Igbinosun have already done, knowing what Lathan Ransom can do over his career when he's healthy and what Jordan Hancock did, especially as that season progressed last year, like they now have to live up to expectations. And I'm not saying that to tap the brakes on it or caution or anything else, but it is different than that group that was so hungry to go out and do it for the first time. That what helps, I think, this group is that Denzel Burke wants to win gold pants and a national championship. And the same is true for Lathan and everybody else on that group. So it's not like they have been anointed. Everyone expects them to be the best secondary in America. That's fine. They're not afraid of that, but there's nothing for them to rest on their laurels about, because in terms of collective accomplishments, they still have to go do that.
Yeah. And that's incredible motivation, but it's also just like who they are too. It's like, you're right in that setting the standard and then down the line having to like meet a pre-existing standard that frankly hasn't been met in a few years are very different dynamics. And the latter I think is arguably more difficult because of the additional weight of like expectations that comes with that. And if there were different guys in the room, that might worry me, but it doesn't with then these guys like simultaneously, I think like care immensely about the reputation of the room, while also like not caring about like the burden of that, like in a way that will like negatively impact their play, if that makes sense. So like I just think they're ready for it, right? And it started last year, and Denzel Burke is the guy who I think like got that going back in the right direction by sort of taking accountability for his own shortcomings as a sophomore, some of which were fueled by injury, no doubt. But I think he probably came into the program with like some preconceived notion of like what this is and how it comes to you, and probably not enough of an appreciation for like what it actually takes to uphold that standard. And now he knows, because he's kind of the standard bearer for the room, and I think that just permeates throughout the whole thing. And it's not just the corners. Like I think Lathan Ransom understands that, and Caleb Downs is new to this, but like he learned about it in recruiting. There's probably not a player in the country who, puts in like the off-field work as much and like honing his craft as much as Caleb Downs does. So like there's just a seriousness about everyone, even like the younger guys who aren't going to play that much this year. Everyone in this room that I think that a different group might not handle the expectations so well, but I think this group might thrive under those conditions.
So if the answer to this is yes, but I understand, is this just so straightforward given the talent that's assembled that you have Davison Igbinosun, Denzel Burke, and then some? I think there's a little bit more, of a grab there for Germaine Matthews with playing time but it's going to be those three. And at safety, you know, that's Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs, and Jordan Hancock at nickel, and then probably Malik Hartford if they need somebody else to supplement there at safety. Although they did bring in Keenan Nelson through the transfer portal. Like, if this feels pretty clear cut.
Yeah, it is. I don't. The only like variable there, I think, is Germaine Matthews and what he pushes for this fall. Whether that is like a more of a rotation on the outside with Denzel Burke and Davis Nigbanosin, or maybe playing some in the nickel behind Jordan Hancock, or some combination of both. Like, I think he will probably play more in a way that's a little hard to define right now. But otherwise it's very straightforward, I think, with like, honestly, in my mind, like, little in the way of concerns. I know, like, there was some stuff at a point in the spring where, like, is safety depth a concern? And, like, I don't know. There's not another Caleb Downs, right? Like, but I don't know that safety depth is a concern so much. Maybe it is. I'm not I'm at like a 4, maybe, on a scale of 1 to 10 on that one. I don't think it's a tremendous concern. And then the rest of it, like, starter wise, even like through the 2 deep, I think most people could probably project that right now.
Yeah, and I think why did Ohio State go into the portal at safety? Well, because they have to practice and get through 16 games. Like, they were going throughout March and April, where Malik Hartford was banged up with, I believe, the shoulder there. They had suffered some transition and some losses in the transfer portal, guys that didn't have a clear path to playing time or opportunities, you know, whatever their motivations were. Like, they were down on scholarship numbers, but they weren't necessarily down on, all right, once you get to August and you put, you know, Malik Hartford back into this picture, once you put, you know, Jaden Bonsu after, like, what seemed to be a pretty good spring for him, like, the 2 deep part didn't seem to be a concern. It was like practice depth and bodies that was like, all right, you probably need 1 or maybe 2 more to add to it, and they got 1.
Yeah, it wasn't. I mean, you like to kind of kill 2 birds there, I guess, right? Like get guys a practice, but also get guys you think might be able to help you in the future. And I think Keenan Nelson still has 3 years of eligibility left. Like, he is a guy who down the road could very well end up helping Ohio State in a more significant way than just being like kind of a pure depth piece this year. And I think he's got some versatility to him. He's played kind of all, if you were like to kind of pick it up and put it in a different program, like kind of all 3 positions in this defense for a safety. So I like that, but it was, yeah, more of a numbers play than it was a reflection of like the talent on hand. I still think Malik Hartford's going to be very good. Very encouraged by what Jaden Bonsu did in the spring. I think probably maybe in the top 10 of the guys who like seem to make the biggest jump from one year to the next for Jaden Bonsu. And it seemed like Matt Guerrieri thought that too, based off how he talked about him in the spring. So that was good to hear. Jalen McClain is a true freshman. I thought showed up pretty well in a couple of spots. So like, you feel good about that down the road too. And like, all of that is sort of colored by the fact that, you know, you're going to have like 2 more years of Caleb Downs, or you get this year and next year of Caleb Downs. Or if both Lathan and Caleb were leaving after this year, maybe I'd feel a little different, but that's not the case. So, you know, you're just kind of looking to replace Lathan at the safety position after this year. And you'll have to replace Jordan Hancock too, if you can. He's kind of in both rooms, but I think they're well situated to replace that as well. So, yeah, it's just not a group that I have really any concerns about, what in the immediate or the long term, provided everyone stays healthy.
I was going to challenge you to come up with one. Like, there's got to be a concern somewhere.
I think maybe it would be like Denzel has seemed to like really embrace like the physical nature of the cornerback position, and Davis Nigbanosin, I think, clearly does. That's like kind of his strong suit. And maybe I have a question of like, when those 2 guys are gone, like who, and Jordan Hancock obviously is a really physical player too. So when all 3 of those guys are gone, like, who's going to set the tone from a physicality standpoint, from a defense that asks a lot out of his cornerbacks to not just cover, like, you got to make tackles, you got to make your presence known. Who's going to pick up that mantle when those guys are gone? And then I saw like Germaine Matthews light a few guys up in the spring game. I was like, okay, the answer is Germaine Matthews. And like Aaron Scott, I think, is a big physical corner. So it's not, those guys have like the physical attributes, I think, and the want to provide that. But it's certainly more of a known commodity with the guys that we know we're going to start this year. So if I had to pick a concern, and like this feels like really reaching, I guess it would be that. But it's just hard to find one. I don't know. Like, can you think of one for this year or next? Like, it's just short of like everyone deciding they just want to stop playing football and go like live in the Bahamas. I think they're going to be all right at the corner and safety positions the next couple of years.
Yeah, I brought it up at some point a couple months ago. We were talking about Germaine Matthews and Davison Igbinosun, and like there was another period where I was like going through the PFF numbers and was like nitpicking things that can be improved. And that was what planted the seed in my mind. A, I really liked the upside for Germaine Matthews. And B, I was like, Davison Igbinosun is committing more penalties than like any other corner in the country on a per snap basis, which again, it's only 6. So total. So it's not like it was happening repeatedly, but that's a decent amount. You don't want that to happen. You'd like to cut down on that. But if that's the worst thing, 1 penalty every other game on a 6'2", 6'3" corner with freakishly long arms and no qualms about getting physical and matching up in man-to-man coverage, you're probably going to be okay. Like that's a product of playing that position the way that he does. You're going to have some of those. Like I said it very specifically. Like that's nitpicking. And if like Germaine Matthews doesn't start this year because Davison Igbinosun like takes another step forward, so be it. I'm not going to feel shame about predicting that Germaine Matthews could take it away, because we've seen like other situations where there is a legitimate claim for all 3 guys to be in the lineup and rotate through. That's when Ohio State has been at its very best with its corners.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely ways that like all these guys can still grow their game this year. Like I don't mean in constantly showering them with praise. I don't mean to suggest that they can't find ways to get better, because they can. Like Davison, I think it's clear it's those penalties. I think it's maybe a little more down to down consistency and like press man coverage. I think he's a pretty good like bail zone type of corner with his range and his length. But maybe rounding out his game a little more would be good. I think Denzel Burke maybe would want a little more ball production than he's had. I think he's got like 2 or 3 interceptions in his career. He plays with incredible positioning that you'd think he might stand a chance to see an uptick in pass deflections or interceptions, either one. I think that's probably true of the group as a whole, just like kind of getting their hands on the football a little more, which we heard a lot about. I think last offseason, we heard a lot about it last offseason, and I think it did show up during the season more than it did the year prior. I'd like to see it increase even more kind of collectively. So that's one area where they can get better. But if they're the exact same players they were last year, Ohio State, I think, still has probably the best secondary in the country.
More HOBs, huh? They need to change that in the box score. Like Ohio State, Jerry should just scribble it out. No more PBUs, they're HOBs.
HOBs. I like that. That's good. Spice it up a little bit. Yeah.
To go back to like your look ahead to the future and the physicality, like I felt that way about, not just Germaine Matthews, because I'd seen that last year, but like in the spring game on the other side with Calvin Simpson Hunt, and projecting some of that based off what he did on special teams and the way he runs around, and like saying, oh, he's not just a fast guy. I think he's willing to do all the other things. Like it's another reminder of how much talent is lined up, because like even coming out of March and April, we didn't talk about him a ton, even though I believe he had an interception and we saw him do some stuff in Student Appreciation Day scrimmage and special teams, as I mentioned, as a true freshman. Like they are just loaded up, not just for this year, but into 2025 and beyond.
Thank you for saying Calvin Simpson Hunt's name, by the way, because I don't think we had said it yet. And he's definitely a guy who I don't, it's probably unrealistic to expect that a 4th like outside corner can work his way into the conversation given how talented they are. But I think he is the 4th guy. Like if especially if you take Jordan Hancock out of that equation, I think Calvin Simpson Hunt is the 4th guy. I think he's like a stud on special teams. I would hope he is this year. And I think he'll have like the tenacity and physicality we're talking about. Because I remember when they got him, there was some question even like if he, maybe not so much at Ohio State, but like I think like some recruiting evaluators like, well, maybe this guy's a safety, or maybe he's more of a nickel than he is an outside corner, which to me suggests that they think he has a willingness to be a good sound tackler. So so like again, it's another guy to further push home the point that like the future is incredibly bright here, because like you're gonna at the very worst you're gonna have Germaine Matthews and Calvin Simpson Hunt back a corner. Aaron Scott will be a year older, and Bryce West, who I was out for the spring and perhaps not forgotten, but just not discussed a whole lot really since he got here. Like I think he's going to be a good player here too. Maybe a little different physically compared to Aaron, but definitely a guy who I think by the time next 2025 rolls around, that he could be positioned to maybe push his way onto the field, especially if Davison ends up going pro, which I think he will after this season. So like Tim Walton's got to show, I guess, that he can keep reloading it, but he's kind of already done that because they have Devin Sanchez and Naeem Alford committed in the 2025 class. And Ohio, I think, is like actually kind of strangely very good at corner in 2026. So like that doesn't seem like the pipeline is going to dry up anytime soon. And like on top of that, like I think it's pretty clear that Tim Walton's a pretty good coach too. Like it's not just that he can connect with these guys and get good talent. He has found a way to make, I think, everybody in his room substantially better since he got here. This is the best corner coaching I think we've seen in my time covering Ohio State. I would probably put it above Kerry Combs, which might be blasphemous to some people. I just think Tim Walton's done an incredible job here.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with the results last year and for what could be coming this year. You mentioned Germaine Matthews playing in the nickel.
Mm-hmm.
If Jordan Hancock is not on the field, do you believe that is the most likely scenario and configuration for Ohio State? Because I don't think I know, like, if I would name who specifically a backup nickel is. It could be a number of people, including Lorenzo Styles, who we've not talked about at all yet on this show. But like, I don't know if it'll be Germaine Matthews, but I certainly would like to watch it.
Yeah, I think it would. I would probably pick Germaine Matthews based off how the spring went, and that does feel like shortchanging Lorenzo Styles a bit because I think I probably would have said him prior to the spring, and then he got hurt. He also only has 1 year of eligibility left, which I didn't realize. Like he played 2 years at Notre Dame, and then I think he got on the field just enough last year to use up that entire year of eligibility, which is kind of unfortunate given his position switch. So he'll kind of have to hit the ground running in camp, assuming that he's healthy enough to do so, to really kind of push his way into, like, I think at best a 2 deep role, but it could be him. I remember talking with Tim Walton about this during the spring, and he mentioned Caleb Downs as a guy who can play nickel too. Like Caleb can play anywhere in the back end of your defense. So there might be some packages where they elect to do that. And maybe, I don't know, you're bumping Jordan Hancock back there, or you're playing Jordan Hancock on the outside, or maybe that's like more of a true nickel or true dime kind of look where you might do that. So, but that's another player who could line up in the slot. And then like Miles Lockhart, I think, is like the future there. They recruited him, I think, specifically to play that spot, but that probably doesn't come to fruition for at least a year. So I don't know. Based off the way spring ended, I would probably pencil Germaine Matthews in there right now, but I think that could be a pretty nice competition throughout August as they try to figure that out.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for you or any concerns about the Ohio State secondary.
Is Ohio State going to bring home the Thorp Award this year?
I think it helps that they have built-in brand name recognition for 2 players. Now, when we get into the weeds, does the fact that you have Denzel Burke and Caleb Downs, who I think are be the 2 leading candidates, although everyone who's starting could potentially be in the mix for that, like, will they chop up the vote and hurt each other? Maybe. I probably not though. Like I think one of those guys will have such a good season, but both Caleb Downs and Denzel Burke are already nationally known names. Like it's hard for me to think that they're not going to claim one of those, which they haven't in a while.
Yeah, I think they will. I could go either way on like Caleb or Denzel this year, and I think if, like, say it's Denzel this year, like I don't think Caleb Downs ends his career without one. So then, like, Denzel wins it this year, then Caleb will just win it next year. Ohio State can go back to back.
Just like he's the senior, he's got the first crack on it. Let him have it.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's sort of how college football awards voting works anyway. It's a racket, and they'll be voting on it in October for the first round of whatever, cutting down the semifinalists. So it's all nonsense anyway. But I do like that also, I think, works in Ohio State's favor. Players that everybody knows across the country, a defense that everybody knows is going to be really good. There's going to be stats for them. Like, you have to assume, if nothing else, the points per game. Like, if they don't throw on Denzel Burke again, that'll still work to his advantage. But I there's got to be individual acclaim for them. Although I think Denzel Burke and Caleb Downs and all those guys would be the first to say that that's not what they're chasing. That's a tight knit group. The BIA thing, like it's also they seem to get along at a very high level, which helps them further that goal. So I think it's going to be really fun to watch them. There's nothing to say. There's nothing to be worried about with them. Like as long as they stay healthy and you knock on wood for them, you hope that they get the chance to. It could be scary. It could be historical.
Yeah, all those things. I think not only the best secondary in the country, but potentially like one of the best position groups, point blank, period, in the country. Like if everything hits the way I think it could this fall.
Well, if it sounds like her hyperbole, sorry, that's just how we feel right now, and that's maybe just the excitement of wrapping up the position state of the position series. It's over. And there's still one more day left in the week. So that means maybe the mailbag will be open for Freaky Friday for the last time of like a true off season. Because once Big Ten Media Days rolls around, I think the off season is over. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it's like Ohio State's only there one day, but it's basically a full week of media day. And then you come back and you have like not even a full week really until camp starts. So yeah, the off season ends on Sunday.
Yeah.
Act accordingly.
I will.
America.
And yeah, you got it, America. And we'll open up the mailbag for you later on so that we can get to that for a Freaky Friday episode of the podcast daily. But this was Thursday, and this was the end of the State of the Position series. Thanks for bearing with us. Thanks to Bill Landis for all the insight. I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.